Good morning, and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this morning. My. Looks like Celtic fans will get their way. Robbie Keane is going to mull things over this weekend, I'm being told. He is going to, well, it could all change. You know what Celtic's like. Robbie Keane. But it has come to light last night that it looks like Robbie Keane is going to mull things over in the weekend, which takes us to Celtic's backup manager list. There was a list put about last night that if Keane does not take the job, which is it's looking, it's 50-50 right now. But the backup list, what do you make of the backup list? Remember when Ange Postecoglou came out of nowhere? I don't think that Celtic will be able to do that this time. That is the backup list. When you look at the people that are on the list, they're all very Celtic friendly. First one that we're going to look at would be Scott Brown, the previous Celtic captain, born in Dunfermline, Fife. Cracking part of the world, born in Dunfermline, Fife, and his managerial career started off up at Aberdeen, where he was assistant to Stephen Glass. For a season, 34 games under Stephen Glass, and then 4 games under Jim Goodwin, and 1 game under Barry Robson as the assistant manager. He then went down to Fleetwood in England in 22-23 season, 64 matches, and then ultimately was punted, sacked, as you do as manager. It then turns up at Ayr United, gets a couple of both clubs, got to say, Fleetwood and Ayr United. Celtic did give Scott Brown players from the academy to try and help Scott out, and Scott to develop the players, so you could say that there is that working relationship there already with Celtic. We know that, and you know, if Scott got the call, what would he say? You know, Neil Lennon got the call and he took up the opportunity as well. Talking about Neil Lennon, we'll go to Neil Lennon next. Yeah, we'll go to Neil Lennon. Neil Lennon has also been on the list. Now, we know what Neil Lennon can do as manager. A lot of fans are the interesting part about Neil Lennon being on the emergency list is that when Neil Lennon spoke about the Celtic fans after the Scottish Cup final, when he spoke about the Celtic fans after the Scottish Cup final, he said, yeah, they were all singing my name today, weren't they? They weren't singing it 5 years ago. A bit of love, is there a bit of love lost between Celtic and Neil Lennon from the fans, from his perspective? Would he take the manager's job if offered it? He seems to be nice and settled at Dunfermline. We know the clubs that he's managed. He was assistant manager at Celtic, and then he was a B team manager at Celtic, and then he was the manager at Celtic all those years ago. Assistant manager of Gordon Strachan for 59 games, and then he gets the manager's job. It was an interesting time at Celtic, wasn't it? And then he went on to be manager of Bolton, 79 games. Manager Hibs, sacked there, comes back to manage Celtic when Brendan Rodgers leaves, gets the 9 in a row, and it was a fairy tale for Celtic, wasn't it? The man who started the run to 9 in a row, it was right that he should finish it. You see where Celtic are going with this. I don't know. Could Scott Brown be the manager to complete the next 9, the historic third 9 in a row that Celtic are going for? Neil Lennon was, he departed Celtic after not winning the 10, and then he went off to Nicosia, and he managed there for 29 games, and then he had a brief spell of FC Rapid 1923, and it was 6 games. It was a deeply depressing time for Neil Lennon because he did have an important member of his family pass away at that time, and our condolences were all with Neil at that time. And now he's Dunfermline manager, and he was unlucky, wasn't he? He managed to get Dunfermline to a Scottish Cup final. He beat some big guns on the way. There's not often that a manager gets 3 chances at being Celtic manager? Would Neil Lennon take up the job? The one that's in the house already and doing a job, did it with Martin O'Neill, is Sean Maloney. Sean Maloney, he prefers, like Neil Lennon, a 4-2-3-1. It's got to be said, Scott Brown is the only manager whose preferred formation is a 3-5-2. When you look at it just like that, Scott Brown could maybe be an ideal candidate for Celtic, just playing that 3-5-2. Don't really need 3-4 at the back in Scottish football, do we? And it would be interesting. Anyway, back to Sean Maloney. His preferred formation is a 4-2-3-1, which we've seen this year at Celtic. Last season, sorry, at Celtic, where he was assistant manager to Martin O'Neill. When you look at Sean Maloney's timeline in management, he was under 20s coach back in 2018, Celtic B manager 2018, and then he went to be the assistant manager of Belgium under Roberto Martinez, who is way out the picture seemingly at Celtic. He then went on to manage his first own managerial stint at Hibernian, and he lasted 19 games with Hibernian before punted out the door. And then he ended up as the Wigan manager from 2023 to 2025. And then he ended up at Celtic after that as development coach, pathway manager. And then he took up the assistant manager job when Martin O'Neill, when Brendan Rodgers left. And that's why he is on the list. But remember that he did say that he will look at the Celtic job, the pathway manager. He said he would give the club 2 years. He has said that in public. He's 1 year into his 2 years. Maybe he only wants to stay at Celtic 2 years and then go and try something else. Maybe he was just like, well, I'll do this pathway job for a couple of years. Anyway, the next one on the list of potential Celtic managers is Craig Bellamy. Craig Bellamy, fantastic player in his time. Manager-wise, he's the current manager of Wales. He is one of the younger ones in the list at 46 years old. I know that Browning, that's a bit younger, but Craig Douglas Bellamy, born in Cardiff. He also likes the 4-2-3-1 formation. Nothing changes at Celtic then if Craig Bellamy does come in. His manager prowess. He was Cardiff Academy staff, just academy staff. Wasn't even manager of the academy. He wasn't in charge. He was just staff. No disrespect to anybody that's just staff. And anyway, he was in head of academy coaching in 2019 after doing a year at being the academy staff. He went on to be the academy coaching from 2016 to 2019, and then he went to be the Anderlecht manager under Vincent Kompany, and then the under 21s manager, and then he went on to be the assistant manager, and then he was assistant manager at Burnley before taking on the Wales manager's job. Mouldy has a way down to Wales this weekend. She has a nice little holiday. When you look at his it doesn't matter about player, does it? Don't know. Who cares? It's manager stats that you're looking at now, isn't it? It's a big boys club. Anyway, we've spoke about Scott Brown being the next potential manager on the emergency list of managers. I need to jump off of this screen and back onto this one to get that screen that I'm looking for. We have looked at Craig Bellamy and what we think. Well, he is on the list. Scott Brown is on the list. Sean Maloney, Neil Lennon, and then finally John McGlynn. Now, John McGlynn is well known to Celtic and born in Musselburgh, 1964. Musselburgh, fantastic part of the world. He also prefers a 4-2-3-1 formation, so not a lot would change at Celtic, really. Well done. When you look at his career, well, this is when it gets really ugly, doesn't it? Could you imagine an ex-Hearts manager as manager of Celtic? He started off with under 17s a long time ago, really long time ago. He is the longest managerial record of all the emergency candidate list. He was then assistant manager, he was caretaker of manager, he then went to Kirkcaldy to Raith Rovers, where he was in charge for 172 games. A long time in Kirkcaldy. Done not too bad with Rovers. And then he was the Raith Rovers Academy manager, and then he was the Heart of Midlothian manager for 34 games. He then went on to manage at Livingston Football Club, and then when he left his job at Livingston, he then became a scout for Celtic in 2018. He went back to manage Raith Rovers around about that time as well, and then that took him on to the Falkirk manager. Falkirk that have just sold a player to Hearts that Celtic let go years ago, and a lot of people said that Celtic should have went in for the player. It is an interesting development when you look at it. One of the other things I wanted to speak about was this came up on my timeline yesterday. There is a club, mindfieldadvertising.com. Comes out of a pretty impressive area of town, Glasgow that is, and there is a lot of marketing agencies in that area. One of their clients is Celtic FC. Doesn't get spoken about a lot though, and it doesn't get spoken about enough. The Celtic board were proven to be paying an agency to run a pro-board propaganda bot accounts on Twitter in very recent memory. It's interesting. All the accounts have since been closed down, but it is interesting that Celtic have been playing dark tactics, isn't it? But anyway, we move on from that. Other than that, it is as you were. It is all about international football. We are all getting ready for the World Cup. When it comes to Celtic news, we're just going to have to wait until next week because it doesn't look like that Celtic are going to announce a manager today. Celtic Starlet turns down a new deal. Is that we're losing another youngster? Yeah, another youngster heading towards Liverpool. 16-year-old centre-back has turned down a new contract offer from Celtic, and he could be Liverpool bound. But the club are trying to persuade him to stay at the club. It's a tough sell for Celtic right now, trying to sell a youngster to stay on at the club, when the reality is that we don't have a manager, we don't have don't even have a pathway manager as it stands right now. Well, we do. Sean Maloney's went back into that position. It'd be a very hard sell for Sean Maloney and co to try and say to a player, just go and stay at the club when we're going through such turmoil, and it's going to be even worse with player turnover. Would the young lad be better staying at Celtic, or would he be better going down to Liverpool? I suppose that's up to him and his family. It's about it, isn't it? Anyway, Martin O'Neill, one last thing. Martin O'Neill was down in Leicester. Yes, he was down in Leicester a couple of nights ago. He was talking about the glory days back in Leicester. This maybe explains why the board had their meeting with Martin O'Neill earlier on, and although he wasn't saying too much about Celtic, obviously, and the current situation at Celtic Football Club, he was obviously talking about the glory days back in the 1990s. Darts with Matt Simpson. Don't watch darts, so I've no idea who he is. It just flagged up when Martin O'Neill was when I did a search for Martin O'Neill. Reliving the original Leicester City glory days of the late 1990s. No talk of Brendan Rodgers and his time at Leicester. You've got to remember that Martin O'Neill was a fantastic manager for Leicester at that time. And it does just go to show that, it is not just Celtic that idolise Martin O'Neill. There are other clubs that equally do idolise Martin O'Neill. Right, that is it. Just a quick one for this morning. We just have to wait and see if anything does come out of Celtic this weekend. I think the biggest one will be happy birthday to Kieran Tierney. Well, you'll expect some birthday card stuff, as they like to call it online. What is it they say? Birthday card pish. That's what they usually call it, isn't it? Birthday card pish. Let me just see if they've done it already. But then again, if it is out to media company that's doing it, why can't I find Celtic? There we go. No, they haven't done it as yet. They've not put out the happy birthday to KT. That'll be incoming this morning once they get their feet under the table. Anyway, hope you have a fantastic day, Celtic fans, wherever you are all around the world.